Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Ehab Youssef, the strategic and the security expert. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed, for having me today. And if I may start by saying that we have to congratulate the Egyptian people, the armed forces, and all the region for the 6th of October, which is coming with a great memory for us, great success, great sacrifices that has been done from the Egyptian people to retrieve their occupied land, and which has been followed by a peace treaty, and activities has been done by, God bless his soul, President Sadat during his time. And the sacrifices have never stopped since then or before, and on that day we have to stand and think about what sacrifices we did, what martyrs we lost, what injuries that we had, and the economic situations we've been through till we were able to retrieve our pride and our dignity again. So today is a very special day, and congratulations for all the Egyptians. It
is a very special month. We will be celebrating the whole month. As you said, Doctor, allow me to be going to the first report, or the second report for the Daily Debate for tonight, focusing on the sacrifices of the Egyptian armed forces, the Egyptian police forces, especially against terrorism and extremism, and the approach of the Egyptian state following the 2011 uprising and the 2013 revolution against the terrorist Brotherhood organization. All of the sacrifices will be spoken about in the upcoming report, and about the approach of the Egyptian state to be combating terrorism and the ideologies conducive to extremism.
The Egyptian state succeeded in breaking the throne of terrorists and defeating extremist and terrorist groups, both in Sinai and other areas where terrorism tried to surface. The state succeeded to reduce the pace of operations to unprecedented rates compared to 2014. That witnessed an escalation of terrorism in response to the designation of the terrorist Brotherhood, in addition to tackling sources of funding and forming committees to combat the financing of terrorism, which contributed to drying up its sources. The Muslim Brotherhood has been banned and designated a terrorist group by a court ruling since 2013 for its involvement in terrorist activities that threatened Egypt's national security. Egypt has declared the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group, criminalizing all its activities, its financing, and even membership to the group. The decision was in response to the deadly suicide bombing targeting a police headquarters in a Nile Delta city that killed 16 people. Terrorism has been one of the most important challenges facing Egypt since President Fattah al-Sisi took office in 2014. And according to previous statements, terrorism was the most serious challenge undermining Egypt towards achieving stability and development, and the Egyptian state made great efforts to win this fight. This great success in defeating terrorism resulted from the wise leadership of President Sisi for building an integrated strategy to combat terrorism, as combating terrorist organizations was a top priority on the agenda of the Egyptian leadership. Since the beginning of his presidency, President Sisi has put forward several initiatives to counter terrorism and counter extremism. In July 2014, during the celebration of Laylat al-Qadr, President Sisi put forward the initiative to correct religious discourse after the Brotherhood and terrorist organizations tried during the years preceding the June 30th revolution to extend their control over the course of religious discourse in Egypt, and directed to promote the extremist ideas in broadcasts that served its interests. Islam is a religion of honesty, mastery, and tolerance, and religious discourse develops with human development while recognizing the fundamentals of religion. In October 2016, during the recommendations of the Youth Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, President Sisi directed the government, in cooperation with Al-Azhar, the Church, and all state agencies, to develop a national working paper that represents a strategy to lay sound foundations for correcting religious discourse within the framework of preserving the Egyptian identity in all its dimensions. The President said that the state is determined to abolish terrorism in northern Sinai from its roots. All sects of the Egyptian people are courageously withstanding the repercussions of combating terrorism, and many families sacrificed their children while facing terrorists in northern Sinai, whether heroes from the security forces or civil citizens. The President stressed that evil people, no matter how horrible, cruel, stupid and ignorant their behavior and aggression are, can never succeed. In the end, those that are good are the ones who will succeed. In 2017, President Sisi issued a decree establishing the National Council for Countering Terrorism and Extremism. Externally, and as part of Egypt's efforts to support efforts to combat terrorism at the regional and international levels. Egypt's moves to confront terrorism were not limited to internal confrontation, but several efforts were made to combat it at the regional and international levels, as Egypt has given the issue of combating terrorism and extremist ideology advanced importance on its foreign policy agenda, as it actively participates in the formulation of relevant international trends at the level of multilateral forums, foremost of which are the United Nations, the African Union and the League of Arab States, and is keen to address various aspects of that issue in its contacts with various countries of the world through bilateral frameworks, and always emphasizes the importance of adopting a comprehensive approach to combating and preventing terrorism and the need to confront all terrorist organizations without exception, as they represent a common threat to international peace and security.
Welcome back. You're still watching the daily debate. Dr. Ehab, Youssef, as we did see over the past report, and we spoke about the celebrations of the Egyptians with the armed forces, with the police forces, about the 6th of October war victories against the Israeli enemy in 1973. But nowadays we have a different kind of war against terrorism, against extremism. The ideology itself should be changed. The awareness should be increased with the Egyptians. But speaking about the late President Mohammed Anwar al-Sadat, because he mentioned him during the celebrations of the war against Israel, he had an approach with dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood back then. Nowadays we have a different approach by the state, by the political leadership, by the armed forces and the police forces, and even the Egyptian people. They are dealing differently with the terrorist Brotherhood organization, especially after the role in the uprising of 2011 and the revolution of the Egyptians against them with the help of the armed forces in 2013. How did you see this approach evolve within the state and by the political leadership, leading to July of 2025 and the Hasm movement that was dealt with decisively by the Egyptian state?
Okay, that's a very comprehensive question. Yes. It might take hours to respond to it, but briefly, let's say that the Muslim Brotherhood organization has been created in the 20s of last century. And they were funded by the Brits at the time to create this organization. What's the objective of this organization? Is to fight discrimination and sectarians in the Egyptian society, like other organizations that has been created in our region. But the main head is the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood during the 40s and 50s did several assassinations, and they were considered to be a terrorist group, and they were dismissed and dissolved during the 50s, before even the 1952 uprising. What happened later is, during President Sadat time, he was facing communists that's coming from the Soviet Union, and it's revolving in the Egyptian society by thinkers and think tanks, and people were absorbing this idea, and at the same time he didn't want to go into liberalization and capitalism all of a sudden. So he wanted to open the gate for the Muslim Brotherhood as an organization to readjust themselves, not to take any criminal actions in the future, and to work as promote the Islamic society in the region. What happened next is that he was killed by one of the groups that is related to the Muslim Brotherhood, because most of the terrorist groups that came into the Egyptian society and came all over the region are coming from the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, like lot of Nagun min al-Nar, Shawqiyun, La'idun min Afghanistan. Most of them are coming from the big head of the Muslim Brotherhood. When things revolved and President Sadat was killed, during Mubarak's time, they were not moving heavily. Till the last 10 years of Mubarak, they started to have a political role, which was, I think at the time, was accepted as long as they're not going to go into violence, and there will be partnership in the political scene.
Yes.
But they were not legally existing. They captured the opportunity of 2011 in coordination with other groups like Hamas and others to assassinate the revolutionists at the time, to burn police stations, to free prisoners from the prisons. And at that time, like 98 police stations was burned in 24 hours. At the same time, several prisons were opened, were violently opened, and 22,000 prisoners were escaping in the street. So all of this was done by, most of it was done by the Muslim Brotherhood organization. What happened next is that the people were still under the impression that these people are kind people, because they didn't see the bad side, or they didn't relate the bad side to the Muslim Brotherhood. So they were thinking that these people are gods, like prophets, or people that asking for good things, and Islam huwa al-hal was the terminology that they was using, that Islam is the way to solve all the problems. So people, when they went into the elections in 2012 to choose their coming president, they were between two candidates, and at the final stage they were between two candidates. One, which is Marshal Ahmed Shafiq, representing the old era, and Mohammed Morsi, representing the new era, which is belonging to the Muslim Brotherhood. So let's say it was 50-50, 51-50, 49 or something. Close. At the end of the day, Mohammed Morsi took over, but the good thing is that they proved that they are not justice. They don't deal with justice with people. They were hungry for power, and when the minute they took over the positions, they were trying to hold on to all the country's positions to make sure that they will never leave in the future. And it's not going to be democracy, it's going to be on their hands forever. When the people felt this, they started saying, no, we're not going to do this, and we're not going to accept the change of regime from Mubarak to the Muslim Brotherhood that will stay 100 years, as they were saying. So they started preparation for the 30th of June 2013. And this was the clash that happened between the normal man of the street and the armed people from the Muslim Brotherhood, which the fights, and we saw that they started beating women in the street, they started beating old men, and they were very violent with people before even the 30th of June. When the 30th of June happened, the continuation of the violence continued by demonstrating and occupying Rabaa al-Adawiyya Square, and they start threatening people that if you don't bring Morsi back to power, or they don't bring the Muslim Brotherhood back to power, this means that violence will continue and terrorist attack will happen, which we have seen during 2013, 2014, 2015. And a lot of our people, our courage people, has died and been martyrs in such occasions in Sinai, and not just Sinai, in other countries, other governors like Cairo, the Ahliya. We saw a lot of people from our police forces and from the army has been killed and injured in such occasions.
Yes. On the other hand, you've mentioned, Doctor, that one of the main aims of the late President Muhammad Anwar al-Sadat was to be using the terrorist Brotherhood organization, or back then it was called the Muslim Brotherhood, to be promoting Islam against the communist tide from the Soviet Union. So they were affiliated with Islam, but on the other hand, we know that they had targets, they had political gains in mind that they intended to have, and they did have until 2013, during 2011 until 2013. So my question is, do you think that they are more of religious people, they had Islam in mind, or they were more of political parties that had a secret society theme within them to be gaining what they wanted?
Look, we have to admit our enemy's capabilities. So they are organized, they're well organized, they're smart. They used all the vacuum that the governments did during the period, the years.
Yes.
So they went to poor people, they give them money, they give them food, they give them, if people want to go to school and they don't have the school fees, they pay the school fees. And they went and they did all of this under the name of Allah. And that's why people started having the perception that these are good people. So they didn't see the bad side, that the preparation of the occupying Egypt from their side. But they were trying to reach out to as many poor people as possible to try to gain popularity and gain support when they need. And that's why when the people went into 2011 elections, the presidential elections, they were divided. So you find that the percentage of attendance was very high, and the percentage that was given to both sides were extremely, like 50-50. So this means that 50% of the society, 50% of the society at that time were convinced that these people have something good to give to the country. But nowadays, if you go into elections from anyone from the Muslim Brotherhood, and he say that I'm a Muslim Brotherhood representative, I'm sure that even if it's democratic, free elections, he will not count more than 5-6 people that are living in his apartment. That's the maximum they give. It's not because they are good or bad, but because the people has been immunized against this. The people saw
we have awareness now.
Exactly, there is awareness, there is immunization that happened to the people. They understand that not everybody that will say I'm working on the faith of Allah, then I believe him. No, it's not going to happen like this anymore. So people has to be working on the ground to support their country, and this is what they're seeing now from the current regime. There is a lot of efforts that are done to support the country and to take it into a better stage, though there is a lot of challenges and economic drawback on the people's life, but still it's between this and that, so you can live with it. But if you see that during the Muslim Brotherhood, the people refused to stay with them and to continue with them in power because they felt that they are hungry for power. They're not going to leave, whatever happens.
You mentioned, Doctor, that they are extremely organized, or were extremely organized. They are a bit smart. They have financial networks. How did the Egyptian political leadership, the armed forces, the police forces, the security apparatuses, they deal, or how they dealt with diffusing the organizational and the financial networks of the terrorist Brotherhood organization ever since 2014?
This is a very smart question, if I may say. Thank you for that. And I think the challenge here was to be able to define what is terrorism. Because financials are not existing in the country, and not just in the country, but there is an international financing process that the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist group are using. So some of the money in Geneva, some in London, some in other countries, and you need to stop moving this money and not bringing it to Egypt. This is one. Second, you need an international support to be able to combat these guys and to make sure that when you counter them, you're not going to be accused of killing innocent people, because they are not innocent people, they are terrorists. So these two items need a definition for terrorism, and this is not existing today. But what happened is that Egypt was able, through diplomacy and public diplomacy, to convey the message to international community that these are threats. And by good luck, there were several incidents that happened, whether in Germany or in UK and London and other countries, where crazy people under the name of Allah also killed foreigners in the street for no reason. They don't know them. And this is where the international community started to think that, yes, there is what they call terrorism. And when it reaches a personal life or a personal putting person in danger or putting properties in danger, this means that there is a terrorist, especially if it's not for a criminal cause, but it's for political cause or for whatever. So people the international community started to cooperate a little bit by monitoring the funds that has been moving, which helped Egypt to stop a little bit of the funding that's going into the country. But this was not the only game that Egypt did and was successful in, but also trying to convey the message internally about what is the Muslim Brotherhood objectives, what are the groups the terrorist groups that came beneath of this organization, and what crimes that they did, how many martyrs that we saw, and what is the objective. That objective is to destroy our economy. And when they destroy our economy by doing terrorist attack and preventing investors to come to Egypt, preventing tourists to come to Egypt, this will destroy our economic situation and will take us into a deep hole where we cannot get out of it. So this has been, the message has been conveyed to the people, and I believe a lot of people understand this now.
Doctor, you mentioned a very important point, which is the international community, because somewhere along the line, somehow we lost hope that the international community would be understanding the real terrorist brotherhood organization that took power here in Egypt between 2012 and 2013. We lost hope that the international community could be understanding what is happening in Palestine, for example, for the past 2 years. But this has changed. So it's not just about the awareness of the Egyptians, not just about the awareness of the Arab people. Nowadays, the international community can know, they can understand what is happening, and the importance of understanding what is happening in Egypt. For example, in 2013, that it was a popular uprising, a revolution by the people against the terrorist brotherhood organization regime that was in power back then. And the international community is also having an uprising against the Israelis and the Israeli occupation authorities, against what they are doing, the genocide war against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. How and when did the international community get more information? How did they get it? How did they build this awareness about what is happening in 2013 here in Egypt, about what is happening in Palestine now in 2025?
Let me be, from my point of view, and I might be mistaken, but I think that what I'm going to say is true. What happened in Egypt in 2013 was the base to let the international community to recognize Israel, to recognize Palestine as a state now. Why there is a relation between this and that? Because if 2013 was not there, and the Muslim Brotherhood were taking over till whatever time, 2015, 2016, then at that time the Palestinians were going to be moved to Sinai, and were going to be staying there, and there would be no conflict between Palestinians and Israelis on the Gaza border towards Egypt. Which will not make the international community realize what happened. When the people are going to move to Sinai, then the thing will be dissolved, and nobody will notice with the things that's happening internationally, Russia-Ukraine war and other things.
The other conflicts.
So it will be, it will be dissolved. Yes, exactly. But because Egypt has the strong borders, and this is because of the army, and we have to salute this, and we have to be respectful of this, what happened, this make the international community to recognize what's happening in Gaza, the war that's happening, the war that's not equalized between the two parties. Civilians have been crashed and killed under the army of Israel. So the man of the street in Europe had started to recognize what's happening, and they started demonstrating in the street against Israel, which made them, by way or another, pressure their governments to take action against Israel. Because at the end of the day, these are democratic countries, and the government will be re-elected from the people. So if they don't move with what the people want, then they will be rejected in the future. So the government has to start accommodating and accepting the peoples on the street what they want. And we have seen this in Spain, we have seen this in London, we have seen this in so many countries. And we're glad that there is a recognition now of the Palestinian state. We are looking forward optimistically to what happens in the future. And I think that the Arab leaders has to take more aggressive role to support this idea, inshallah.
Speaking about the awareness, the increasing in awareness, not just for the Egyptians, but for the international community, more knowledge for everyone, especially through the social media. Everyone knows about the connections between the terrorist Brotherhood organization and Hamas in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip, especially as you mentioned. In 2011, there were some events that they were affiliated with, or they were involved in during the events of the uprising of 2011 here in Egypt. The 20 or the 21-point plan proposed by the US President Donald Trump is involving the disarmament of Hamas and some authority, some international transitional authority, to be ruling over the Gaza Strip. It will be chaired by Donald Trump himself. What does this mean to the future of Hamas and to the future of the terrorist Brotherhood organization, if it is still there?
I think that the Muslim Brotherhood organization has been already dismissed. I mean, they will need
globally.
They will need ages and ages to rebuild their capabilities. The main thing that they wanted to build over since the 20s until now is the acceptance from the people. And now the people will not going to have the acceptance.
And this is thanks to Egypt and the Egyptians and the political leadership and President Sisi.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So the connection between both of them.
Yeah, what I want to say is that the Muslim
Hamas specifically, because you mentioned that the terrorist Brotherhood organization is gone, maybe forever.
Yes.
What about Hamas?
Hamas is also gone, because Hamas is counting on the funds that they were taking from Israel through Qatar, or from Qatar through Israel, and they were not going to have weapons in the future to be able to do their role. What we are keen about is how the Palestinians are going to be able to rebuild their country, Gaza, West Bank, and the other cities, and how they're going to have their country together. This is this challenge that the Egyptians and the Arab nations and the international community will be facing in the very near future, like in 2 or 3 weeks, because now Hamas said that they will release the hostages and they will give the dead bodies to Israel, and this is the last card they have. After this, Hamas has nothing to play with, and they're not going to be on the table in the future. So which Palestinian leader will take the responsibility to go into the negotiation with Israel? How strong they will be to be able to build their countries? Who will fund the rebuilding of Gaza? Because if this problem has not been solved, and this is what President Sadat said very long time ago in 77, 78, that this problem, if it never been solved, they will never going to have peace in the region. So this is a main issue. At the end of the day, these people has been suffering since 48 till now, and they need to start at least breathe the freedom and have the right to live.
On the ground, we had mentioned that the Egyptian state, thanks to the awareness of the Egyptian people, the political leadership, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, along with the army and the police forces, they have managed to be dealing with the terrorist Brotherhood organization on the organizational level and the financial networks as well. But on the ground, terrorists on the ground, the armed forces and the police forces, they had to deal with them, not just in Cairo, but in Sinai, more importantly, in different parts of Egypt. How did you see this, I wouldn't say battle because it took years, but dealing with them, how did you see that?
It needed a lot of courage, a lot of information, a lot of sacrifices from each soldier and officer on the ground to be able to combat these terrorist groups. They were funded from abroad. They were having a lot of technology and equipment, and at the same time their objective were to have one, like once they announced Wilayat Sina, they wanted to have Sina as an independent state for terrorists, and without the sacrifices that has been done by our police and army forces and the intelligence and the judges and the normal people, the Bedouins who are living in Sinai, by sharing the information with the law enforcement, by being on the first line of defense to help, this was never going to be an easy war. It was not an easy war, it was not an easy battle, but at the end of the day, alhamdulillah, thank God, there is no terrorism there. Maybe there will be a bomb one day somewhere, but this can happen in anywhere in the world. It's not like it was in 2013, 2014, till 2016, even 2017. So nowadays, alhamdulillah, things are under control. Our borders are secured from all sides, which is a challenge because, as you know, there is a war, or there is a big issue in Libya, in Sudan, and we see what's happening in Gaza. So having our armed forces able to control our borders from all sides and at the same time the country is developing. The dollar is stable, the financials are coming, investors are coming to the country. So it's a very challenging equation that, thank God that is happening. Our leadership is trying to do their best, our army is doing their best, the police forces, and the man of the street is accepting all the pressure, financial pressure, to be able to accommodate the better future, inshallah.
And finally, Doctor, one important point for the future of the country, for the future of the young men and the young women of Egypt, something that is always tackled and discussed by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, is to be correcting the religious discourse, not just through the mosques, not just through the Ministry of Endowments, but through schools, colleges, universities, the media outlets. How do you see the importance of doing this for the future of the nation, to be increasing awareness?
It's very important, because any group that want to be an extremist, they use religion to be a scapegoat for using this, whether they are Christians, Muslims, or Jews, or whatever. So adjusting or putting things in the right curriculum, in the right form, this is the best thing to do. So what we have to do now is to be able to combat violence and to combat terrorism, is to reach out to minds. We have to communicate to minds, to let them understand the reality, understand the best thing and how to be done. This is one. And to create hope, because if there is no hope for youth and for the coming generations, they will lose their motivation to be better and better. So what we need to do, or what the country is doing and need to do and need to continue doing, is to communication, being able to reach out to minds and to find a better future for the coming generations.
Yes, Dr. Ehab Youssef, the strategic and security expert, thank you very much for being with us.
It's a great honor, and I really congratulate Egyptians and all the Arab region for today, 6th of October.
Yes, thank you very much. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow.